start it out here. Jason Frerichs, representative in the state legislature in his first term with the South Dakota Farmers Union.
Thank you, Congresswoman Herseth Sandlin. Welcome, Secretary Vilsack. I farm over here east about 100 miles, but also I teach at Lake Area Tech in the Ag Department. I brought along our seed and grain class. We're supposed to be in class right now, and here we are listening to the Secretary of Agriculture and Congresswoman. But all of them are, please stand up, they're ag production students in their second year. All of these fellows will be back on their home farm.
Thank you for bringing them.
Thank you to everybody. We need more young people just like them, and we're glad to have them involved. Also along with us is Al Rader, a Watertown farmer, a former instructor there, but also a mentor to me in my passions to continue to be involved in production agriculture. So thank you for coming. My question is, we have young people involved in agriculture. What can we do to have more of them back to the home farms, back in their home communities? A suggestion I have for both of you is, can we look at an opportunity where we partner current landowners that are hopefully ready to retire fairly soon, and maybe they can partner up with a young person. And maybe that young individual can have access to the land, but in that process, maybe that landowner would eventually be able to sell the land to the young person. And maybe they could alleviate some capital gains taxes, because I've been working on some land dealings, and the landowner came right out and told me, he says, I won't sell my land unless we do a 1031 exchange. So they don't want to pay the taxes, and that's just the way it is. Second part, I know they aren't really related, but I would like to have addressed, first off, I thank the Congresswoman for being at the table on the clean energy legislation that is before Congress right now, and of course is out of the House and on the Senate side. But also, Secretary Vilsack, could you please address what's in it for agriculture? What will we receive? What are the benefits? And if both of you could address that as well. Thank you.
Representative, those are really important questions. Let me frame the young farmer issue in this way. With the exception of the people in this barn today, everyone else in agriculture is aging. South Dakotans are a little quicker than some other folks. The average age of a farmer today in America is 57 years of age. Just 5 years ago, it was 55 years of age. And the reason it has increased so rapidly is that we had a 30% increase in farmers over the age of 75 and a 20% decrease in farmers under the age of 25. So it is an issue that this country needs to be aware of, because we have seen a significant shrinkage of the number of younger farmers. Now, I think there is opportunity for young farmers, and I think there is some indication that people are beginning to awaken to the opportunities. Why do I say that? Because in the last 5 years, in relatively small farming operations, we've seen 108,000 new operators come into farming based on the ag census. In production agriculture, in the opportunity or the size of operations that generate more than $500,000 in sales, we actually saw another increase of 41,000. So 108,000 more in farms with less than $10,000 in sales, very small operations, and 41,000 more in relatively large operations. The sad story, however, is in the middle, which is that we lost 80,000 operations between $10,000 in sales and $500,000 in sales. So in addition to making land more available, as you suggested, there's also the need for us to create more opportunity for farmers not only to market their product, but also if they need farm income, and off-farm income, and many farmers currently do need that. Another statistic, 900,000 farmers, the 2.2 million operators in America today, have to work at least 200 days off the farm to make ends meet. So it's a combination of increasing market opportunity and also creating job opportunities so that if that is necessary to keep the farm, it's available. Very quickly, the Congressman fought hard in the Farm Bill for a beginning farmer loan program. Relatively small amount of money was allocated to that program, but very important to those who are receiving it. About $17 million was provided in terms of grants and loans. We'll continue to work with our FSA to try to create new opportunities to expand on that program. We also just announced a program called Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, designed to create more local opportunities for producers to link themselves up with local consumers. The ability for those who produce to be able to sell to schools, to colleges, to universities, to hospitals that might be in a relatively short geographic area. Creating opportunities with processing facilities, storage facilities, warehousing facilities, rural development, job creation. Know your farmer, know your food. I think the energy title of the Farm Bill is very important in terms of creating new opportunities to take what has been waste product and turn it into something extraordinarily valuable. So I think a combination of those things and many more are ways in which we can encourage young people to participate in one of the great callings of life. As it relates to the clean energy bill, I know there's a lot of skepticism about this, a lot of concern about it, and a lot of folks are troubled by it. But here's my take on this. We asked USDA to do a series of studies on the impact that this bill would have on particular kinds of farming operations. We asked them to take a look at the upside and the downside. We asked them to take a look at impacts it would have on fertilizer costs and on energy costs, and what they might be able to qualify for under offsets and allowances. And here's what the economists at USDA found. They found that on the fertilizer side, that there is not likely to be a significant increase in fertilizer expense for the first 7 to 10 years of this act. And the reason being that under the current bill, as it's currently crafted in the House, there are allowances that will help the fertilizer industry avoid increased costs. In other words, it'll give them resources from allowances to allow them to transition to a new process. Energy costs may very well go up, but our study, in an effort to be conservative, decided that there would be no adaptation, no new technologies, no steps taken by farmers to reduce energy use or use alternative ways. But we know that's not the case. And the reality is that farmers are great adapters. When there were energy costs in the 70s, we saw farmers adapt, and on a per acre basis, we've seen them cut their energy usage by half. But we wanted to be conservative. So that's sort of the downside. On the upside, we looked at the ability of farmers to be able to qualify for offsets, whether it's changing the way in which they put their crop in, the way in which they use fertilizer, the way in which they raise livestock, the way in which they capture gases from livestock, the way they can convert those gases potentially into a product. Looked at all of those opportunities, the way that they could use non-productive land creatively to qualify for offsets. And we tried to determine what the cost or the opportunity side would be. And the determination of the USDA economists was that in the first 5 to 7 years, it would be a slight plus for farmers. In other words, $1 to $2 billion of additional revenue coming into agriculture generally in the country versus the cost. In other words, a net of $1 to $2 billion. But over time, that number would increase rather significantly and could get as high as $20 billion annually. Now, to give you a sense of $20 billion, what that would mean to the agricultural economy, we're estimating this year that ag net income will be somewhere in the neighborhood of $55 billion. Now, last year was over $80 billion, but $55 billion this year. Well, $20 billion would represent somewhere between 25 and 35% increase in available cash. We think that that's significant. And so we're going to continue to work to make sure that as these bills go through Congress, that A, agriculture is not forgotten, B, that the opportunity side for agriculture is utilized and emphasized, because while we're a small part of the problem in terms of greenhouse gases in this country, we are a very large part of the solution. And if you take the energy title of the Farm Bill, you take Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, expansion of broadband, and an offset program that will work for farmers, what you have is 4 cornerstones or building blocks for a new economy that has not really existed in rural America today. Creating jobs and more opportunity, market opportunity for farmers. I'm excited about the prospects for those 4 cornerstones to make rural America economically viable for the young folks who are in your class.
I won't go on too much longer. The Secretary's covered both of your questions very thoroughly. Let me just say on Section 1031 exchanges, I've worked over the past few years to address inflexibility in that sort of vehicle in different ways. producer sold land and took the proceeds and invested in a renewable energy project to be able to avoid the capital gains tax, and willing to work to find some other flexibility to enhance the partnership that you described between younger and near retiring farmers and ranchers, to enhance opportunities given that we know access to land, either owning it or even renting it at affordable rates, is a real challenge for our younger producers. On the climate policy, and the Secretary knows where I stand in terms of the current House bill. We both agree that the Senate bill that was recently introduced has a long way to go to meet the interests of agriculture. They should have started where the House left off, in my opinion, to further improve the bill. But I do hope that they will address agriculture sooner in the Senate process than agriculture was addressed in the House process. Chairman Peterson and I and many others, as you acknowledged, Jason, we stayed at the table to negotiate something that could be a net positive, although there are some competing views that continue to be out there, and more study and more discussion and debate is warranted, and we need to take the time to get this right. In my opinion, we made tremendous progress from the House Agriculture Committee's perspective in addressing the indirect land use issue, in addressing early actors issues, in addressing some things that we couldn't have gotten otherwise. This was the only vehicle we could do it. But in building on that, I'm hopeful that we will marry this policy to a comprehensive energy policy that's not just good for renewable energy in South Dakota, but gets serious about some of the short and midterm sources that we have domestically on the Outer Continental Shelf and in other federal lands, which is the second largest source of revenue to the federal government after income taxes, that will also help us invest in new technologies, deploy those new technologies that can be accompanied by the potential that USDA, with its expertise, has cited in terms of potential offsets if we set it up appropriately, and USDA, not EPA, administers that program. So we also have to make sure that it's fair to all regions of the country, and that small and mid-sized investor-owned utilities get treated just as fairly as large utilities on the East and West Coast, so that our consumers aren't shouldering a disproportionate share of the burden of transitioning to a new energy economy, which also, as the Secretary rightfully identified, holds tremendous economic possibilities for wind energy and biofuels and the solutions that South Dakota agriculture and all of agriculture can offer to a national, truly national and comprehensive strategy. Thank you for your question.